litters for patients over those drums. And the nurses said, there's not enough space if we need oxygen equipment for the patient. That's when Clyde's bigger planes came out with the 4 engines. We were just the 2 engine. So it gives you a little idea of inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, the DC-4 was a new airplane at that time. It was brand spanking new. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, a 4 engine like that would be a lot bigger too. Yeah, yeah.
A lot more range and more cargo space.
So, and they met, they didn't know one another out in the Pacific, but they met one another after the war. Where were you?
We were at Patuxent River, Maryland.
In Maryland?
We were both based there. He was in a different squadron.
That near Washington?
Yes,
We
right
had just come
outside.
in from the Pacific in late October '45.
October, yeah.
45, yeah. That's when a lot of them were coming home, yeah.
That's
That's
right,
right.
yes.
Yeah. And that's where you met and fell in
Right.
love.
Yeah.
Clyde is from Missouri. You know, people from Missouri, if they don't know about something, they say, "Oh, I'm from Missouri. I don't know anything about that." Isn't that what they used to do? They used to do, Clyde.
We were married there in the
Oh.
base chapel,
Uh-huh.
and Clyde was flying from there to the west coast, and the nurses squadron was flying the east coast up as far as Argentia, Newfoundland, and over to Cuba, Guantanamo Bay then, and Cuba. And we transported patients out of there to Key West and then on up to Washington.
Well, look at that, what Mary looked like. Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Well, back in the days we're talking about. Okay, well, why don't you go ahead with your questions?
Questions for me?
So yeah, pretty much we start off by well, you already said your name, the branch service, and like the division, the highest rank, and where exactly you were stationed. You sort of went over that already.
Oh, yeah, you've had some of that. My name, Mary Leahy Hudnall, and I came from Malden, Massachusetts, and I went to Newport, Rhode Island, Naval Hospital, first duty station, and did some training, Navy training there. And from there, transferred to Navy Pier in Chicago. You want that part next?
Yeah, you can just talk.
Oh, all right. And at Navy Pier, we was a small group of nurses, and I was there almost another year, and I was called in to the head nurse's office, and she told me I was going in to air evacuation. There were 24 of us picked from across the states, and we were going to be trained by the Army nurses. And well, we thought, why the Army nurses? We thought it'd be Navy, you know. And but they were wonderful. They had been down in Brazil training about boarding patients on these airlines or airplanes. I weren't in a line at that time, and they learned all the different things that went on and rectified a lot of the mistakes that were being made when they were dealing with these patients. And they were the ones that trained us out in California at Hamilton Field. And it was going into a special cubicle and putting the mask on because they wanted to see how high an altitude we could take before we had to put our mask on for oxygen.
Oh.
And then the next duty was over in a swimming pool, and they gave us a man's shirt. And we thought, oh, they're wearing a man's shirt in a swimming pool. But they said, put it on backwards. And they tied the arms in back of us and threw us in the pool deep end of the pool. And we had to learn to tread water. Well, I knew how to tread water. And they kept us in there, and, you know, some of the girls had never done it, and the bubbles were coming up by the dozens. But everybody finally passed the test, and then they took us to an airplane and showed us how to lock the little straps, the big canvas straps that came down from the top of the plane. And then we finally said goodbye to the Army nurses, but they were just wonderful to us. So we had a little different idea of how they were. And what was the other part of that you wanted?
Let you just kind of talk about the experience, but were you enlisted? So it was sort of enlistment, or was it just drafted? Were you did you volunteer?
I volunteered, if you want to say that. I didn't go in as a reservist. I applied for regular Navy, and that would have been for at least 20 years. But I wasn't thinking of 20 years at the time. We were just thinking the war would be over and we'd probably get out, get married, or some other thing. I would go back to work, doing private duty, something in that vein. But I received a letter stating that I was to have a physical exam, and I had the physical and passed that. And they sent me another letter, and I had to give them a little more information on taking my state boards for my RN in Boston. And they asked me to go to see my own family doctor, and he was to write a recommendation of my seeing him over a few year period, mainly about health. So I had another letter, and they said I was accepted, and that was in May of '43, and that's when I went down to Newport.
What was your rank, Mary?
I went in as an ensign, and over the time spent, I became a GG, and then I finally full lieutenant. Most of the time you were in grade at least 18 months before you advanced to another grade. And that was the status I came out on, full lieutenant.
What do you remember about well, you kind of explained it, but the first days in the military, and what were some of the places that you went during the war?
That I went, well, after we finished training out in California with the Army nurses, we left Alameda Naval Air Station, and they took us to Honolulu, and they put us up at Aia Heights Hospital in Honolulu overnight, because where we were the first group of air evac nurses, they didn't know what to do with us. They had no orders or anything for us. So the head nurse in our group said she would wire back to the base where we had just left. And they gave her a few ideas, and it was for us to stay in Honolulu for about 3 days. Fortunately, we had one in our group who had lived there, and she had friends that lived up in the hills that had jeeps, so they took us around and showed us a little bit of Honolulu area, the places you could travel at that time. And then they decided they were going to ship us to Guam. Guam became our headquarters, and from Guam we flew to Iwo Jima, and then up to Okinawa. And when we brought them back from Okinawa to Guam, they could go to the Naval Hospital if they weren't able to travel further. And they kept them for a while, but the rest of the patients we took back to Honolulu. They checked them aboard the aircraft there, and then admitted them to the hospital in Honolulu. And the next morning, we took some of those patients back to the States, to Oakland, California. And then from Oakland, they were dispersed to near their homes, And we went back to Honolulu and then back out to Guam. And that was our routine for the next couple of months right there.
Do you remember anything about other people in your unit? Or
Oh yes, all of the girls that I trained with, we stayed good friends over the years, and when everybody married, we all got invitations to the wedding, and when they had a new baby, we got baby cards, and we kept writing over the years. And on our planes, when we'd be deadheading back from Oakland back out to Honolulu and Guam, we picked up passengers. Dennis Day came aboard. You people don't know Dennis Day, but he was a singer in those days, like Perry Como.
Yeah.
Remember Perry Como?
No.
See, still too young, see?
Well, well-known singers,
He
they're
was a-
all well-known.
yeah.
Well, or Frank Sinatra.
He was a good singer, and he sang a lot of Irish songs, and we had a few gals that were Irish, but we didn't know who he was at first when he came aboard.
Yeah.
You know, he had a peak cap on, no shirt, and he was singing something, and my friend Norma said, "That's not right." And he said, "Oh yes, those are the words." She said, "No, I'll sing it for you." She said, "You'll catch on." And when he ever got off the plane and the pilot told us who he was, we were a little embarrassed, to say the least, telling Dennis Day how to sing a song.
Yeah, yeah.
like, were you awarded any medals, citations?
Yes, after the evacuation from Iwo Jima was over, we were given a Navy citation. They took us up from Guam to the headquarters of Admiral Nimitz, who was chief in the Pacific at that time, naval I'm talking about. And because old MacArthur was back in Australia
Yeah.
revamping things at that time, and Admiral Nimitz, and there was a British high-ranking officer and some of his men at the table, and when the dinner was over, they announced they were giving a citation to the 12 Navy nurses. So
Oh,
I have a copy of that, I think,
wow.
here. And that's the group of Navy nurses that arrived on Guam. And they received a citation.
Hold it in front of this.
That's funny. And ironically, Bud was on Guam too, but he wasn't quite out there yet.
Well, 45.
The request of the Commander Forward Area Central Pacific, the commanding officer, Air Evacuation Squadron 2, takes pleasure in commending Lieutenant Junior Grade Mary U. Leahy,
Yeah.
United States Navy, for the service set forth in the following. For excellent service as a flight nurse assigned to air evacuation in the forward area Central Pacific during the first quarter of 1945. She participated in numerous missions over large evacuations of wounded from the battle area at Iwo Jima. Her skill, care of patients, and devotion to duty throughout were worthy of the highest praise. C.A. Keller, Commander, United States Navy. I didn't know if you wanted that.
Oh.
So that was up at Admiral Nimitz, and that was given just before they went aboard the Missouri to go up to Japan to sign the peace treaty. So we were kind of happy that we did get to see Nimitz.
What was it like after the war, like coming back? Were there any adjustments? Just
Sort of pandemonium at first, because when they announced the war was over, everybody on the bases, you know, where we were in Alameda at that time. We had gone across from Oakland where we had left patients, and when they announced it over the loudspeaker, people jumped up from tables out of, you know, the chairs they had been sitting on, knocked them over, and the racket was tremendous. and they all ran outdoors. I don't know what they thought they were going to see outdoors, but they all ran out, and they were hugging and kissing one another, you know, and shaking hands. Typical excitement type of thing. And we didn't know what we were going to be doing at that time, but we went back over to Oakland, and they were doing the same thing over there, you know, running around, cheering and shaking hands and all that. But then we got orders to, we were supposed to come east at that time, and they said, no, there are no orders came in, so we'll give you leave. And they gave us leave to go down to Yosemite Valley for about 5 days. So we were down there at a cabin for 5 days. And then from there, we came back to Oakland, and then we shipped east to Patuxent, where we met.
Mary, if I might, could you back up a little bit here, because I think they'd be very interested in hearing about Iwo Jima and Steven Spielberg's
That part?
tape. Yeah.
Oh,
Now, how did he get in touch with you?
well, I had a call one day from a literary agency that his son was out in Minnesota, and I think they maintained a home out there also, the Ambroses, Stephen Ambrose's family.
Stephen Ambrose, yeah.
Because Stephen Ambrose himself, well, Clyde talked to him when they were making that movie, and his father was a flight surgeon. Isn't that what he told you, Clyde?
Was it what?
Stephen Ambrose's father was a flight surgeon in the Navy.
I'm not sure.
No, I thought he told you that.
Well,
Anyway, after that call, they said, you know, they wanted to know if I was out there to begin with. And I said yes. And they said, would you be willing to have a meeting with us? And I said, yes. I thought maybe they were coming, you know, to Boston or something. And then another letter came and said that they would like to meet us out in California at DreamWorks Studio, Spielberg's studio. And they said they would fly Clyde and myself out there, which they did. And that's where Ambrose interviewed us with his son. His son would, if I said something, he would check the history or the date, that sort of thing. Because Stephen Ambrose was writing a book, The Price is Right, at that time. Not that
well,
book.
no,
That's
he was
European.
making this video,
Yeah,
The Price for Peace.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, go ahead.
And they, at the studio, they Ambrose interviewed me again. And at the same time, they were recording and doing pictures and all their equipment that they use when they're doing movies, you know, all the aluminum and all that. And the lights were going on and off like a windstorm. And Ambrose was the nicest gentleman you would want to meet. About what you asked about.
Iwo Jima.
Oh.
This, Price for Peace.
Oh, this,
Yeah.
yes, you want to know a little bit, I'll back up a little bit. We flew into Iwo Jima, and they were still strafing, the Navy and, of course, the Japs on the other side. And when we got out of the airplane, it was like the biggest 4th of July you ever heard. Boom, 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 constant. And you felt like the ground was almost moving. And these litters were all over the ground. And the sights, unbelievable. No legs, no arms, heads covered. You didn't even know if there was half a head under the bandages, that sort of thing. And then the surgeon that was on the ground invited us to come into a tent where he said the worst patients were. And some of them were getting IV solutions, and I looked at them and I thought it was up to us to decide if they could go aboard the plane, if we thought we could manage with what we had in equipment to take care of them on the flight back, because it was 4.5, 5-hour flight back.
Was that back to Guam?
Back to Guam,
Yeah.
yes. And the flight surgeons, the surgeons on the ground agreed with us that they probably wouldn't make it. So it was kind of hard to pass over some, and they'll look at you, oh, take me, you know. They wanted to get home, of course. And we go around to the outside again, and we checked them. Some of them didn't even make it. They were gone by the time you checked a different stretcher, that sort of thing. So it was pretty rugged. But you see, our planes were not compressurized, and we only flew the highest 5,000 feet. Or the problem would be if somebody had a big wound in their stomach, say like an appendix incision, and you went up any higher, the abdomen would open that incision up. So that was our main problem, really. But we could give plasma. I was never trained to give a needle in an arm. In training, we called the interns to come up and do that sort of thing. But you kept your fingers crossed. You'd seen it done 100 times probably, or more than that. So you put the tourniquet on, you were lucky you hit the vein, and they got their plasma. You get proficient at things after a while, too. And you learn from your mistakes, too. But we get them back, and we had a very good record of safety of the patients coming back. And the boys we had big loaves of bread on the plane that were baked on Guam, and we had to cut them, and we had big bolo knives, you know, with a blade about that thick, and that's what we cut the bread with, and our corpsmen did a lot of that for us. And of course the corpsmen we had were excellent. Well, they were trained at Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is one of the biggest ones in the country. And they helped serve the food and fed the patients for us, if they could eat. Most of them couldn't eat, but when they saw the bread, they just wanted to take it and hold it and handle it. And I was down back just before the plane landed, and I was putting a little lipstick on because my mouth was dry, and I thought, well, get some lipstick on, it would help. And some of the patients started to raise heads, and one of them said, oh, nurse. And I thought he was sick, and I ran to him. He said, would you do that again? He said, that reminds me of home and my mother. And I thought, oh boy, how many times can you accuse? And Stephen, not Spielberg, Ambrose liked that idea, and as a matter of fact, that's in Price for Peace. I think in the end, something about
You'd be able to talk a little bit. You said you went to Okinawa as well?
Yes, when they secured, well, I say secured Iwo Jima, when there was no need for more patients to be evacuated, because what was left then could go on the hospital ships. They took them from there to Honolulu on the ship. And then we went to Iwo Jima, to Okinawa, and those big planes that Clyde was talking about came in, and we thought that was a miracle. 4 engines now instead of 2. We thought, oh, this is great. But inside, of course, the cabin was much bigger, and we had more litters and tons more patients. And it was, and the supplies were better by this time too. They could get through, a bigger quantity of supplies for us, medical supplies. And but the boys, Army and Navy boys that we did evacuate from there, they were pretty badly beaten up too. Most of their surgery was arms and legs, and we also had other things too, but arms and legs were the things they lost mostly in Okinawa. And the Japanese, when we were waiting for the plane to get loaded up, because see, when they brought the litter out, they had a lift that they put near the open door of the plane, and they'd raise the litters up on that lift, even with the floor of the plane, and then they had to take them in. So it took time to do all that. And we were standing there on the ramp waiting for this to be done. And we noticed the bushes, they were like that tall grass you see in the swamp areas. It parted, and there were Japanese women, and they had bowls, and they were looking for something to eat. And our corpsman said, "Get in the plane, get away from those women. They may have bombs, you don't know." And we were warned later on. We should have been warned before. But the corpsman said, "We were told a few people were going to be captured. We were to shoot them." Boy, that didn't make us feel very good. So we said, "Look, we'll keep the corpsman in front of us from now on," which we did.
How many
But
patients could you take on that?
on the big one,
Yeah.
we had 35, and then some of them were in chairs on the big ones. Do you remember how many chairs, Clyde, in the back of that?
You mean in addition to the stretchers?
Yeah,
No, I don't remember.
I think
Probably a dozen.
probably a dozen, yeah. That's close. They're what they call the walking wounded. They
What was
would
it?
sit up in a chair.
Walking wounded.
The walking wounded, yes.
Mhm.
And is there any other like things that you can remember, like just memories that you wanted to talk about? Or?
Memories that I'd like to talk about.
That you wouldn't mind. That you wouldn't mind mentioning.
Oh,
or,
well, we had some good things. One lady that cleaned our Quonset hut, I don't know if this is what you want, she didn't speak very good English at the time. We didn't speak Spanish, which they all spoke, and all the natives. And they said, I had gone down to give shots to the children, measles, they were coming down with measles and things like that. And they said, well, you go down and give the vaccinations, help with them. So we did, we went down, we took care of them all. Well, this gal, mother of a daughter that wanted to get married, asked me if when I went to Honolulu, could I buy material? And I said, well, I could look into it because I wasn't buying any material. I had no time to sew my own clothes that were having holes in them. And she said she wanted to make a wedding dress for her daughter. So I went into McInerney's, which was a pretty nice store downtown Honolulu, and I asked the lady. She said, we hadn't sold material in quite a while, but she said, I'll ask the manager, and maybe they have it stored away, and maybe I can get you some. So she said, come back tomorrow. I said, I can't. I have a flight out tonight, so I can't come back. Well, wait. So I waited, and about 10 minutes later, she came down with a big bolt of white, like a silky organdy material. And I thought, who wants a wedding gown out of something like that? It was pretty, but you'd have to have layer upon layer, so you didn't see through it, actually. And but I took it. Well, you'd think I brought in millions of dollars to them. The mother and the grandmother made her wedding gown, and all of the tiara, they beaded themselves from little tiny beads that they got out of shells on the beach.
Wow.
And they had all their neighbors collecting those down on the beach for them. And the gown turned up, and I have a picture of it at home. And the man's suit looked like it was his Uncle George's suit. I don't know who his uncle was, but the sleeves were way down to here. And when you looked at the legs of the pants, they were way over his shoes. And I thought, I wonder he didn't trip and break his neck. But they were thrilled with it. And the little things that, now my mother would send me candy kisses from Charlie's Kisses in Malden. It was pretty notable for the kisses. And I gave them around to the girls after I unwrapped them. And I put them on the table in our Quonset hut. And when I came back, it was just covered with ants. So the housekeeper came through and I said, ew, I don't want to handle it even. So she took the whole thing and she dumped it. No do, she said. She got a big bowl of water. You had to put the candy in the middle of the water. And she did. She had a little gadget. She rested other candy that came in. And so we never had any more ants eating our candy. Little things like that that made us happy.
Yeah.
And we could also go outside the door and pick our bananas. That was another good thing.
Oh, banana
But the
tree.
camaraderie with everybody in there was just terrific. We all stayed friends the rest of our lives. And, well, there's 4 of us left. Yeah.
You said you got interviewed, but I was wondering, is there any other veteran or organizations that you
Well,
are a part of?
yes, I didn't join the Legion or, American Veterans of Foreign War, any organization like that. But we were very influential in our own city of Peabody, talking to former Mayor Turigian about having a monument put up on the lawn of City Hall. And he was agreeable, and then it went before the assembly, and they said yes. And he had a friend that did the engraving on tombstones, and he said he'd talk to them, see if he could get a good price to have the engraving done for the front of it. And they were very helpful as far as doing that, and it all passed. And we, as a matter of fact, I think I still have the picture. Yeah. There's the monument, and it's on the lawn of City Hall, downtown Peabody. Now we'd like to know if this new mayor would let us engrave our names on the back of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there were no names on it?
No, it was to be everybody that
Any-
went
any-
out of
women,
service, yeah, as long as they were a lady veteran.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had a time collecting them. And I did go to Connecticut to the Iwo Jima Post down there in Darien, Connecticut. They invited 5 of us to come to their organization when they were having a convention. And they also invited the author of The Raising of the Flag, the book he wrote of
Oh,
our
that's,
fathers.
yeah,
Flags of
we saw that down in
Yeah, you
Washington,
have that,
didn't
don't
we?
you?
Raising the flag.
Yeah.
And they-
Flags of our fathers.
Yeah, flags of our
You're familiar
fathers.
with this, the,
Is it on that one? It must be.
well, that's the first flag, I think.
Have you gone to the monument in
Lots.
DC?
I haven't been able
Oh,
to.
you haven't been to?
No.
Oh, okay, a lot to see.
Want
there.
to, but
Oh, well, you'll
Yeah.
get there eventually. Well, we went with a group here a year ago,
Uh-huh,
and they treated us royally. They wanted us to see the new World War II memorial,
yeah.
and it's sort of semicircular, and it has all the states and a big granite block, And
Lot to
they
see.
gave us a free trip, airline trip to Washington, and when we got there, they were all in the lobby cheering and
Bradley,
everything
that's
as we
the
came
one.
through. We didn't expect anything like that. And then there were wheelchairs, if you didn't want to walk, you could have a ride, and they fed us and then brought us back free of charge, and we couldn't believe it was a great trip.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go
Yeah.
is free, and that's the best part.
Well, they
The
have
other
a
one?
Navy.
Flags of our fathers, it wasn't Stephen Ambrose, it was James Bradley that wrote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's about Iwo Jima. That statue, you've probably seen
Yep.
pictures of that
There's the
picture, that famous photograph
Gives you an idea
down on
of
Iwo
what it looks
Jima.
like.
Yeah. Yeah.
is there any other memories that you'd like that you can think of, or that we haven't covered that you'd want to share, or is
I can think of right this minute. It'll probably pop in my head later. Can you think of
Well,
anything that you might
The
be
thing that I had mentioned to them, this Price for Peace, and Stephen Ambrose And you did mention a little bit about him, and then you got into your experience on the beach there.
Oh, yeah.
Because what Stephen when she talked with Stephen Ambrose, you know who he is. He makes movies. He's a famous movie maker, and he made this this documentary that he called "Price for Peace." And when he interviewed Mary, he found an old a documentary film from World War II that had your picture in it on the beach at Iwo Jima when
Yeah.
she was tending these wounded men. And it's in this video that he made. And this was on TV and so forth. It's probably, what,
Yeah, a couple
10
of
years old or
ago,
something?
yeah.
Yeah. But Mary, there's a picture of Mary actually on the beach at Iwo Jima.
Yeah. I was
Tending
kneeling alongside of the
these-
litter with the patient.
Yeah. So that was kind of, how did they happen to find that?
They
Film
went to
clip.
Bureau of Medicine in Washington, went through, they were given the privilege of going through their records, and that's where they found the flight nurses section. And there were pictures of us, and then the Iwo Jima pictures, and because we were the first ones that had done anything as flight nurses for the Navy. And nobody else handles those. They have to have special permission to go through. Well, at that time you did, because there was a limit on number of years before they could be handled in Washington, those
Yeah,
records.
the security.
Yeah,
Sure.
security deal, yeah. So, but Jane Kennedy was the one that was considered most photogenic. And they did a lot of pictures of Jane, and she was on everything that went out as far as the flight nurses went.
Thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I hope it helps you.
Oh yeah, definitely. This all helps. Thank you so much.
Good. And I was near the wheelchair, and she said, "Dad, is this what you want?" And he just turned his head and looked like that. And I went over nearer to her, and I said, "Are you familiar with this statue?" And she's our monument. And she said, "My dad was there." She said, "You can't get him to open his mouth about it." I said, "Oh, really?" So we went around the back of the monument, taking more pictures according to where the sun was that day. And I came back, and he was still sitting there, staring in his face. And I said, "Would you mind if you were in my picture with this statue?" He looked at me, and he said, "No, I don't mind." I said, "Are you familiar with it?" He just stared at me. I said, "I was there." Well, he turned his head, and he kept looking at me and looking at me. "You couldn't." I said, "Yes." I said, "We were nurses and we evacuated." "You did?" And he came right up in the wheelchair, and she could see him talking to me, and she wondered what was going on. And he said, "Yes," he said, "I was a flamethrower." He said, "And every time I turned to put that flame in that hole, it killed me." He said, "I died a little each day," because he said, "I wouldn't want somebody throwing flames at me." See, that angle bothered him. So anyway, I moved away from him then, and I said, "I have to go, my bus is leaving." And I went around the back of the monument, and she was standing there, and she was crying. She said, that's the first time we've ever heard him say he was a flamethrower.
Wow. That's
It
something.
bothered her, yeah.
Boy.
So you never know. Well, the end of January, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I was not there the same time you were.
No.
You probably landed at Guam,
Oh,
did you?
that was part of the
Spent
routine.
many nights there.
Many,
That was-
ready nights there?
That was our western hub. We'd go to Guam, and from there we might go to Philippines or Admiralties or any other of the islands scattered
Yeah, we
around.
did go to the
And
Philippines
we
too.
come back
We
in
didn't pick
Guam,
up
then we headed
patients,
back
so-
to Honolulu.
But you never met Mary there.
No.
No,
No.
no, heavens no.
No, but we
But I
went,
met a lot of other flight nurses.
I'll bet you did.
we went
Making
to a
friends there.
reunion
Did you
in
know
San
that,
Diego.
Mary? Did you?
Oh, I knew them all. We went to a reunion in San Diego after the war, of course, and we opened the door and I thought, oh, they were all gonna greet me, you know. Oh, hi Clyde, hi, they all knew him. Never mind me, they left me in the lurch.
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
But they were a good group.
I bet they
Well,
were.
Mary, your close group, are many of them still living? Your
Those nurses,
Nurses.
are there
Are
any
there
from
many?
around here?
One in Connecticut, that's the only, well, two in Connecticut, one's not very well right now.
Yeah.
And the one that I was very friendly with out in Illinois, she just passed away, almost a year now. And that's it, the rest of them are all gone.
So how many were there of you, about?
Well, according to the Navy records, they said they trained 24. And we were the first, well, 12 that went out there.
Oh,
The
really?
dozen, we called ourselves the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah.
So they must have had others though, later on,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Yeah, but the
24.
Navy did away with that outfit because the Army, the Air Force took over with their big planes
Oh, the
with
Air Force,
coronary units and
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh,
So the
The
Navy
Navy
stopped.
doesn't have flight nurses anymore.
when you go up,
No.
yeah.
That's
No,
Air Force
that's been done away
territory.
with, yeah.
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 And the Navy doesn't have air transport anymore
No.
No.
Oh.
as squadrons. They have their own base service transportation.
Yeah,
Mm,
That's not a squadron.
mm.
airplanes are expensive, I guess.
Well, the Air Force seemed to take over most of
Yes,
that duty.
yeah.
Except for the Navy, the fighters they have on the aircraft
Oh,
carriers
yeah,
and stuff.
oh, yeah, those are still going,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
carriers.
What do you do?
Well, I was on a dry dock. You remember Apra Harbor, the harbor at Guam?
Thanks.
you.
The air base was further away from that, but I was in the harbor.
I never saw the harbor.
You never saw the harbor, okay, because you probably flew over it, but you never paid
Yeah.
much attention. But they had a big harbor. Guam has a pretty good harbor there, and that's why one of the reasons that island was important. And they had two big dry docks in the harbor, and I was on one of those dry docks, the USS ABSD-3. It was a Navy dock.
Yeah,
And it was sort of an experiment they had at the time. They built these docks in sections, and they towed them out across the ocean. And there was one down in the Philippines, and there was two at Guam. And I'm not sure. I think there was only maybe a half a dozen that they built. And the whole dock could be submerged. It was stationed in the harbor there, but what they did was flood the tanks with seawater, and the dock would go down, and then they could pull some ships in. This is the way a dock works. And then they would pump the water out so the dock would come up and lift the ship out of the water. And they have dry docks on land now. They don't have. Have you ever been to Portsmouth, Maine? Well, they've got a big dry dock up there. In fact, they had the ABSD-3 up there, and I didn't know it until we had a reunion one time. And I found out that the dock that I was on was in Portland, Maine.
really?
Because after the war, they sold that dock
Yeah,
to the Bath Iron Works
yeah,
up there.
up in Maine.
Yeah.
And there it was, and we had a reunion up in
Did you?
Portland, some
Yeah,
of
we
us,
all
yeah,
went. It
yeah.
was fun.
Yeah, but the largest ship we took up was a cruiser, the Pennsylvania, and that was pretty big, but we could pull it out of the water.
You could.
Most of the time they were LSTs, landing ship tanks or landing ship personnel, landing craft. Yeah, why don't you get us a drink? Smaller, ships, and we could put 3 or 4 of them on the dock at the same time and lift them up. I wasn't on the ship when they took the Pennsylvania out of there. It got torpedoed near the end of the war.
Yeah.
And so they took it to Guam so that they could repair it, and they did. But they would repair the ships and paint them and stuff like that on the dock.
Is that right? I didn't know that, about raising it up.
Yeah. Well, what they did, it was big pontoons, like big
Yeah,
pontoons. They
yeah.
had wing walls, and we slept in these wing walls.
And
They
you-
were big.
Oh my God.
And they had a mess hall in there and a laundry and the whole bit right on the dock.
Yeah.
And so they would flood these tanks down below, and of course the thing would sink. And so far they could measure the depth on it depending upon how the keel of the ship that they were going to dock. If it was small, they didn't have to go down so far,
Yeah.
but to take a large ship, they had to go down quite a ways
Yeah.
to lift it up. Yeah.
Well, that must have been a good reunion, you guys.
Well, it was kind of fun, yeah.
Bath, Maine.
Yeah. I went to 3 or 4 reunions, and then it sort of fell apart. The guys got too old nobody wanted to run it anymore, and, you know.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
But we-
Age tells, doesn't it?
It
Here's the
does.
crew. The pilot and Nye Coleman, and there was an orderly on there. And that was the smaller plane. And that was the award picture that we got from Fate of our fathers, Flags of our fathers.
Now, is you in this picture?
And that's my jar of
What's the question?
sands one of the patients gave me. He wanted me to be sure to keep that jar of Iwo Jima sands. So much
You
for-
remember those girls, Clyde?
What?
You remember those girls?
And there's Dennis
Oh, that
Day.
was
See, you
Mary.
wouldn't have known him.
Was
He
that
was
Mary?
way before your time.
Yeah, I thought it was, yeah.
I wasn't telling you any fibs, okay?
She's the only one I know there.
Okay.
I
I
hope
don't
it-
remember her. I may have
Dennis Day.
known her one time, but
Who's that?
Yeah. So that's Mary.
you know,
Yes,
That's a nice-
Mary on Guam when I
That's a
came
good-
back from Honolulu with a 2-piece bathing suit. And we used to have a wonderful bay to swim in there at Guam when the tide was in. And when the tide was
That's a
out,
nice
we'd
picture of
go
her,
out
yeah.
near the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yes.
saw it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you guys.
Yes.
I forgot I had these.
Well, I was stationed, when I got out there, I was at Tumon Bay. Do you know where Tumon Bay
Yeah,
was?
yeah,
That was a
again.
beautiful beach.
Yeah, that's
And I
where we
was
swam.
sleeping in a tent on a platform there. They had like an army tent, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For
is
a
that
while.
where we went swimming all the time?
Yeah, 2-1 Bay.
Did you go there?
Yeah,
water.
and when my Denise,
That was our
Worked
swimming
down-
pool.
yeah, when the tide was in, and she went to a lab to work in Washington, and one of the other fellows in the lab said something about Guam, and she said, "Oh, you come from Guam?" She said, "My mother was there during the war." He said, "Your mother wouldn't recognize it now. Very swishy hotels all around Tumon Bay.
Oh, really?
And you have to belong to the hotel to swim. And we had an old
Well,
raft
this
and
was
everything
all
in there.
just jungle and coconut palm trees.
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah, you got it.
yeah.
Banana trees.
Yeah.
The airport we used on Guam, Navy, single runway, it's the international airport now. The Naval Air Station at Honolulu, John Rogers Naval Air Station,
Yeah, that's
is the international airport now.
Yeah.
And we lived right on the airport. It was about, total of about 20 hours. What's the island in the Marshall Islands?
Back in those Yeah, with the twin engine DC-4, you were
Quadrant.
3.
We flew to
Kwajalein?
Kwajalein
To
about 10
refuel.
hours, roughly, and then to Guam, another 10 hours. That's a day's work.
Yeah, that's a long flight over the ocean. Were you ever worried about crash landing, going down? Because, well, you know, in a plane like that, if you went down, Clyde, you wouldn't be here.
No,
Well,
tell you a
we,
funny story. One time I was out there somewhere and I had a fairly new co-pilot, and we had what could have been what looked like a problem. The fuel pressure gauges, you know, all the gauges have a red mark for maximum. 2 of these fuel gauges, the hand went past the maximum. That was up about there, and the hand went on around. The co-pilot says, "What'll we do?" What could you do?
Nothing.
The engines were still running.
As long as they were running, there's nothing you could do.
Fortunately, I had heard this happen to somebody else, and I heard that they didn't have a problem.
So you relaxed.
I said to my co-pilot, "What would you do?" He was worried.
I don't
Well.
blame him. I would have been.
But you probably had an idea, you couldn't have lost all that fuel,
No.
right?
Oh, no.